Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that the US dollar, the most powerful currency in the world, has collapsed. Your savings, grocery store shelves, worthless. So high, you couldn't afford to drive. Empty. Gas prices. It sounds like a scene from a movie, but here's the truth. If the dollar ever lost its value, life as we know it would change overnight, not just in America, but across the entire world. But what does a dollar collapse really mean? And what would actually happen to you, your money, and even your everyday life? In this video, we're breaking it down in the simplest way possible, so by the end, you'll understand exactly how dangerous a collapse would be, and why the world watches the US dollar so closely. To understand what happens if the US dollar collapses, we first need to understand what the dollar really is, and why it's so important. The US dollar isn't just America's money. It's the world's most powerful currency. In fact, nearly 60% of all international trade is done in US dollars. Oil, gold, electronics, cars, and even loans between countries, most of it is priced in dollars. That means whether you're in Europe, Africa, Asia, or South America, the dollar plays a role in your economy. And it's not just trade. The US dollar is also the world's reserve currency. This simply means that countries keep large amounts of dollars in their central banks, like a financial safety net. Why? Because the dollar is trusted. It's stable, backed by the largest economy in the world, and supported by the US government and military power. Now here's where things get interesting. What does it mean for a currency to collapse? A collapse isn't just the dollar losing a little value, it's when people suddenly stop trusting it altogether. Imagine going to the store with $100, but by the time you reach the cashier, it's only worth $50. That's collapse. It's a rapid, extreme loss of value, often caused by things like hyperinflation, government debt spiraling out of control, or a total loss of confidence in the system. And while this sounds far-fetched for the US, history shows us it can happen. Look at Zimbabwe in the 2000s. Their money became so worthless, people carried wheelbarrows full of bills just to buy bread. Or Venezuela in recent years, where inflation got so bad that families needed stacks of cash just to pay for basic groceries. So, why does this matter for the US? Because if the dollar collapsed, it wouldn't just affect Americans, it would send shockwaves across the globe. Countries that trade in dollars, countries that hold US debt, and even regular people with savings or investments tied to the dollar would all feel the impact instantly. Think of the US dollar like the foundation of a giant building. If the foundation suddenly cracks, the entire structure, the global economy, shakes with it. So, what would everyday life in the United States look like if the dollar collapsed? The first and most obvious impact would be inflation turning into hyperinflation. Right now, we complain when prices go up 5% or 10% in a year. But in a collapse, prices could double or triple within weeks, or even days. Imagine walking into a grocery store and seeing a gallon of milk cost $10 today, then $25 tomorrow, and maybe $100 next week. Why? Because the dollar would no longer be trusted. Businesses wouldn't know what the money in their hands would be worth tomorrow. And when money loses trust, prices go out of control. Next, savings accounts would be wiped out. If you've worked hard and saved $10,000 in the bank, a collapse could mean that money buys almost nothing. Retirement funds, pensions, even investments tied to the dollar would lose value overnight. For millions of Americans, decades of savings could disappear in an instant. Then there's the stock market. Wall Street depends on the dollar's stability. Without it, stocks would crash. Companies wouldn't be able to afford imports like raw materials, electronics, or oil. Many businesses would shut down, leading to mass layoffs and soaring unemployment. And when people lose jobs, fear spreads fast. you'd likely see panic buying at stores. People would rush to grab food, medicine, water, and essentials before prices climb higher. Gold, silver, and even cryptocurrencies could become more valuable as people look for alternatives to dollars. Everyday life would change overnight. Going to the gas station. A tank of fuel could cost hundreds of dollars, or stations might not even accept cash anymore. Shopping for clothes, electronics, or even basic medicine. Shelves might be empty because imports would stop coming into the country. To put it simply, a dollar collapse would create a crisis inside the US that touches every part of daily life: food, housing, jobs, and savings. But here's the important part: it wouldn't stop at America's borders. Because the US dollar is tied to almost every country in the world, the shock would spread globally. Let's explore how that would play out. The US dollar isn't just America's money, it's the world's money. That's why if it collapses, the effects would be felt everywhere. First, think about countries that hold US debt. Nations like China, Japan, and others own trillions of dollars in US bonds. If the dollar collapsed, those bonds would become worthless. That means those countries would lose massive amounts of wealth instantly. Second, global trade would slow to a crawl. Right now, about 80% of international trade involves the US dollar in some way. Oil is sold in dollars. Airplanes, electronics, and cars are priced in dollars. If that system suddenly broke, businesses around the world wouldn't know how to price their goods. Trade between countries would become chaotic. Third, the oil markets, known as the petrodollar system, would break down. For decades, countries have sold oil in US dollars. If the dollar collapses, oil producers might demand payment in euros, Chinese yuan, or even gold. That shift would throw global energy markets into turmoil. And here's where it gets even scarier: when global trade slows, supply chains collapse. Countries that rely on importing food, fuel, or medicine could face shortages. Imagine poorer nations that already struggle financially; they could face famine or unrest almost immediately. At the same time, other currencies might try to step in. The euro, the Chinese yuan, or even digital currencies like Bitcoin could rise as alternatives. But here's the problem: no single currency is as widely trusted as the dollar today. So instead of one strong global currency, we could end up with a fragmented financial world where trade becomes slower, more expensive, and riskier. The result? A global recession, or even a depression. Millions of jobs lost worldwide. Rising poverty. Political instability as governments scramble to hold on to power while their economies crumble. But while these big picture changes are massive, you might be wondering, what does all of this actually mean for ordinary people, for families just trying to survive? Let's break it down. For ordinary people, a dollar collapse would hit hardest in the basics of life: food, housing, healthcare, and safety. Groceries could become unaffordable, with basic items like bread or rice costing many times more than before. Rent and mortgages might skyrocket as landlords and banks try to adjust to unstable money. Hospitals could struggle to get supplies, making healthcare less accessible. Even traveling outside the country could become impossible because nobody would want to accept dollars. Families might start bartering, trading goods and services instead of using cash. Communities could turn to alternative currencies, like gold, silver, or even local digital tokens. In some cases, governments may step in and issue a new currency or a digital dollar, hoping to restore trust. So, could this really happen? The truth is, it's very unlikely. The US economy is still the strongest in the world, and the dollar is deeply embedded in global trade. A complete collapse is extremely rare for a currency like the dollar. But that doesn't mean there aren't risks. Rising debt, inflation, and competition from other currencies could weaken the dollar over time. And while a full collapse is unlikely, preparing for uncertainty is always wise. For beginners, protecting yourself doesn't mean panicking, it means diversifying. Don't keep all your money in cash. Invest in things that hold long-term value, like real estate, gold, or even strong global companies. Keep an emergency fund. Stock up on essentials that would help if prices suddenly spike. Because even if the dollar doesn't collapse, smaller financial shocks, like inflation or market crashes, are real risks that everyone should be ready for. The collapse of the US dollar would be one of the most dramatic events in modern history. It would shake America, it would shake the world, and it would touch the lives of every single person, no matter where they lived. From empty shelves and lost savings to global trade chaos and political unrest, the fallout would be enormous. But here's the most important point. While this scenario is possible in theory, it's extremely unlikely in practice. The US dollar remains strong today because of trust, stability, and the sheer size of the American economy. Still, history reminds us that no currency lasts forever. Empires rise and fall. Economies shift. And that's why understanding money, and preparing for uncertainty, is one of the smartest things you can do. So, what do you think? Could the US dollar ever collapse in our lifetime? And if it did, how would you prepare? If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more beginner-friendly explanations on money, finance, and the global economy. Thanks for watching, and remember, knowledge is your best protection.